Content is Fictional, an RPG-focused podcast. I'm Tukey, former academic gone rogue.
I'm Randy, the Random Generator.
And I'm Ginger, professional film industry victim, still waiting on my last paycheck.
Sorry about that.
Well, that's not good. Well, let's talk about something more fun then.
Having a paycheck.
What's it like to get paid?
Pretty good.
I was thinking more along the lines of D&D. I mean,
I don't know. You see money, then it's gone.
Money in D&D.
we can change. We can change the whole direction of this podcast.
Yeah, Tukey, what are we changing it to?
First class you ever played. How about that?
Ooh.
I already mentioned mine before, but I guess I didn't mention the class, but Baduk Hanantragal was a barbarian.
He sounds lovely.
He was pretty good. I actually lied anyway. He's not. My first class I ever played was actually a fighter. It was a dwarf fighter. It was very standard with that. I'd say the first one I really got into was Baduk in sort of the role playing and everything. But yeah, I was in a 2A, I believe. So different kind of mechanics and stuff back then. It wasn't 20 years ago or however long. It was actually only maybe 7 years ago, but it was still, they were into those mechanics. And then we integrated to 5e later on. And I actually, that's when Baduk was 5e and then my fighter was actually 2A.
Interesting.
Thanks.
I've never played a different edition, but I hear good things about third. Everybody likes third.
From what I hear, third is something that's so super expansive and gets so, if there's some sort of condition that exists in the world, like I broke my elbow and so my arm kind of is just weird for a few days, third edition apparently has something for that. It's basically became so convoluted and so bloated with how much stuff it kind of had, which was a good and bad thing. It's kind of like World of Warcraft and things like that, where when things go for so long, you have so much to offer, but then new players are like, my goodness, this is a lot to take in.
What do I do with all this?
Yeah.
The first character I ever created was a wildfire druid, fire genasi, named Ula. But the first character I ever created that made it into a game was a elf paladin named Mithreva. And I got to play her, I think, 3 sessions before that campaign fell apart. So not a whole lot of experience with her, unfortunately, but she was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think for me, if I remember back, I believe it was a cleric was my first class I ever played. And yeah, I want to say it was actually a human cleric, which is different than how I would probably play now. But yeah, I mean, the reason I actually even played cleric as the first one for me was because it was sort of my style from video games.
Support.
Yeah, support, healer. And when
Tank.
I was talking with the DM, the tank. Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. It was like a full plate, a cleric healer, basically.
Oh, like a war cleric?
Yeah, I believe it was.
Don't look at me like that, Randy.
Yeah, right up in the mix of the battle, like they should be.
Yeah.
Don't look at me
With
like that.
With that +1 weapon they got from a dead ally.
We needed the money, all right? We needed
Man,
the
that would've been
money
useful.
real bad.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
What about you guys, though? What was some of the reasons you picked that as your first class?
I didn't know enough about D&D, so I picked a martial character to figure things out from there.
That's fair.
I just really wanted to be a druid because I love all things druidy in real life. I thought it would be fun to have a pet and stuff, be able to talk to animals. But I didn't get to play her because that campaign never happened. So the second one that I picked Paladin. I guess kind of similar to why you picked Paladin for Lex. I wanted her to have a backstory specifically where she was betrayed by her order. And that just seemed like the best sort of fit for that kind of backstory.
So we have a mix of reasons. Some a little deeper than others, some not, which is totally fine for a first character for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then right after that, I did start a Strahd campaign, which also didn't go very long. But my third character, because you brought it up, was also a human cleric, which is funny. She was kind of like flavored like, I don't know if anybody's ever seen that show that got canceled on Netflix and everyone was mad about it. Warrior Nun. She was like a warrior nun. She was really fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously some of our first classes, but what about some classes, A class or classes that you guys haven't played much at all yet?
I have not played a monk at all. I have not played a barbarian or an artificer or a wizard. I think those are like the main ones that I haven't like even thought about playing yet. You know, like some of the other ones that I haven't actually gotten to play, like I've mentioned, I've at least created characters for and like looked into builds for, but I would say monk, barbarian, and wizard are three that I haven't really ever even looked at so far.
Do you have some reasons why? What's making you not play those classes, Ginger?
Wizard, I just feel like the archetype of the wizard, the typical archetype of the wizard is just not a character I gravitate towards.
Yeah, smart. Yeah.
Smart. Yeah. Bookworm.
That's probably why you don't like an artificer either.
Artificer specifically, I will say that I have not looked into it because it's, to me, and maybe it's not. I know, Randy, you played it a bunch, and I could be totally wrong, but to me it seems like a lot of extra thinking that I don't feel like doing while I'm playing.
You're kind of right.
It just seems like that would be something I would need to work up to in terms of like how many things do I want to think about. Especially as a chronic overthinker, it just doesn't seem like the class that would be fun for me. It seems like I would just get really stressed out trying to play them to their full potential because they're really kind of like limitless in their sort of options.
Yeah, they're at the same time they're kind of a day by day one, so they're ones that you can switch up what they want to do on a long rest. Some of the things. So
right. So it's like every day I have to like come up with a new invention. Like if I could do that in real life, I'd be so rich right now. I wouldn't be waiting money. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, if we had magic in real life, man, just imagine the possibilities, you know?
You know, like I'm not creative enough to be an inventor, I think is my big holdback for artificer. What about you, Randy?
Yeah, I think for me, there's a decent amount I haven't played similarly, like wizard, monk, blah blah blah, rogue, bard, paladin. There's quite a bit I haven't played, but it's mostly because I haven't had the chance to play them. Like I've had ideas for just about all of them, but I'd say probably the least one I've gravitated towards. Like ironically, it might also be the wizard, despite making fun of it, but that's more because I think in games typically I don't like being the full of one class. Like I don't like being like the mage or the warrior. I like being the sort of hybrid of them, like the warlock or a paladin, something that mixes the two together in some sort of way. So those are a little less enticing to me. Although nowadays I kind of like doing a little bit of everything, and wizard has its own values and is really enticing. But I'd say that's probably my least gravitated towards would be a wizard.
I guess I would say too, like about wizard, that say for example my current character, like there are ways for other classes to like take the cool parts of being a wizard
100%
that serve you better and still not be a wizard. Like as a Pact of the Tome Warlock, I have like the ritual spell, like Gift of the Ancient Secrets or whatever it is that lets me scribe rituals from literally any class. And I just copied all of our wizards' spells into my book, you know? So it's like, not all of them, but all the ritual ones. So it's like you can still get some of that like wizard flavor into your other classes without having to be, yeah, like you said, like less flexible as a full wizard, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I'm slightly similar to one of them that you mentioned, Ginger, but then one I haven't played at all and sort of even avoided was actually Rogue. And it was mostly just because of, I think I just had like a limited view on the play style and the personalities that would fit a rogue. And I just sort of avoided it for those reasons. And that was actually sort of the main reason I even picked it in the current campaign, was because I was avoiding it. And I'm definitely glad I did. I'll talk about more about that later. But
you just needed to get in touch with your emo side.
Just a little, you know.
Yeah, but he already was trying to do that with one of his other characters who was a bard
Yeah.
because his dad didn't understand him. Shifts hair back.
Yeah. He was very emo.
Aw.
But now, honestly, it's very different. I'll touch on that in a little bit later. But like, I would say the one that I'm avoiding the most now is the other one that you said, Ginger, which is Artificer. Some similar reasons. One as well that it does feel like it could be a very complicated class to get into. But at the same point, I feel like I have some like limited views of it. But I'll probably try to give it a chance at some point just because of what ended up happening with Rogue.
I also, and Randy, you can correct me if this is wrong, and I guess this is also like up to the DM per whatever campaign you're playing, but like the way we play is like, we have to buy our spell components and like we have to have components for every spell we cast or else we can't cast, like we are on top of all of that sort of tracking stuff. With the Artificer, to me, it seems like if you're just making stuff all the time, like I would be so stressed out trying to track my inventory, like do I have what I need to make this? Or like, oh, I have a new idea. Crap, I have to go shopping. Like, I'm not super into like shopping heavy characters. Like my cleric is hard enough on me. So I think that might be part of it too.
Yeah, they don't have a limitless like amount of items that they can create. So they can't just create like 10 bags of holding or something. They have a limit to how many, if I recall correctly. And they can only make so many at a time as well. Like let's say they probably have like 4 that they know or something at the first time they grab it. So there's things like that there's limits to it that sort of help it, but it is a very complex character. You are 100% right. It's a different sort of complexity where like an artificer could actually, and my first artificer as an example was making a bunch of items that it could infuse and it could create for another character. So he actually had armor for him or other things like that allowed the other character to shine rather than himself. And that's a whole nother factor to put into it. And he was an alchemist. So he'd create potions and stuff every day and provide them to that character as well, or himself or the other party members eventually. And that's where the sort of complexity of it kind of comes in, but it also allows you to shine in a way that no other character can. Because how many other characters could be like, hey, I made this bag of holding. Here you go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not against someone else in our party being an artificer.
Yeah, of course.
That would be great.
I think for me, when I do plan on trying out Artificer, I'd probably put some extra limits on it in the beginning, maybe like backstory reasons or something, just to help me get into it. To like almost simplify it a little bit at the start just to get comfortable with it, and then like release those limits a little as it goes. That's one idea I've had. I don't know how exactly I would do it, but come up with a backstory reason basically and then simplify it that way.
You'd be surprised. Since I'm the kind of person that typically looks for a lot of the information of a game before I even really play it, you guys, let's say you pick an artificer, I'd probably help you for it for so many steps that you'd feel like that you've got a pretty decent handle on it. One of the fun things I loved about it was mechanical tinkering, which is a very small things. Let's say like prestidigitation, but a little more cool to me, is that it can turn non-magical objects and give it some property to it. And one of the properties was making a light source on it. It'd glow for 5 feet, an additional 5 feet. Well, I used to have a whole thing of ball bearings and then I'd glow it up and throw it down a hallway. And that would be a light source. You could have another one where like it continually makes a nonverbal sound like waves or chirping or something like a roaring or something like that. And you could have it be like a toy, or again, it could be another ball bearing that's just sitting there making the sound. So someone has to interact with it. So there's so much creativity to an artificer just by the base level of the class without having to explore spells and stuff like that they have to offer, that it's really exciting for me. And I'd say that's also why it's probably my favorite class.
Oh,
Nice.
So it is your favorite class. That was going to be the next
Probably.
thing I asked you guys.
Yeah, I didn't get to play it a whole lot, but like, man, like the creativity that an artificer could have and the things you could do for it is really cool. I think druids are fun and barbarians have their little bits of flavor. And honestly, I like all the classes a lot. But Artificer with its just slapping you with the creativity is really interesting for me.
So that would be your top one then, huh?
Probably.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. That feels right for you.
Good.
My favorite. I think theoretically and aesthetically, Druid is definitely my goal class, right? Like I've still never gotten to fully play a Druid, but I love everything about them. I love their like casual, nature-based disdain for society. I love their very neutral sort of like lean towards anarchy. I like it's the Princess Mononoke syndrome, right? The whole, being one with nature and like protecting nature and
potentially being a mass murderer but for a different cause.
Yeah, like I grew up on Final Fantasy VII, and that was the early my early like window into eco-terrorism, friendly eco-terrorism. And I think druids are good for that. And you can't really do that in real life without some sort of consequences, so I just do it in my fantasy games in multiple medias. Maybe we shouldn't admit that on a podcast, but oh well.
Nope, it's out there.
It's out there. I think a lot of people that are frustrated about our inability to do anything about climate change probably could relate. So I'm going to leave it out there. It's fine. But no, I also just like, who doesn't want to be able to talk to animals and like talk to trees and teleport through plants and control the weather. It's like, you're Storm and you're like 10 different X-Men all at one time.
Until your dog's constantly telling you, "Hey, feed me. Hey, need to go out. Go out." It's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, well, that's why it only lasts 10 minutes.
Thank God.
Turn it off quick.
Yeah, just turn it off. Just drop it.
Drop concentration. Yeah.
But yeah, Druid I think would definitely be my favorite class. But like I said, I still have not gotten to fully actually play a druid. I've built several druids and I've never been able to play any of them, and I really want to one of these days. Soon, perhaps.
Oh.
What about you, Tuki? What's your favorite class?
So for me, it's actually a pretty simple one. I'm going to go with Barbarian. I would say Rogue, very unexpectedly, has become probably my second favorite after this campaign and actually getting to experience it, but I still feel like Barbarian for me wins out. There's something really fun about like the simplicity of it, and then I also really enjoyed it was a particular subclass, the Ancestral Guardian or Path of the Ancestral Guardian was just, I don't know, like the play style of sort of being a protector of the group and having a lot of abilities that let you do that, and even combining that with like Sentinel and keeping enemies in place and stuff. It just, I don't know, like the play style of the Barbarian really was a lot of fun. It also, like I mentioned, is just, I feel like it's a very simple class to get into, which then also lets you have a lot of freedom with, how your character is acting and the personality, and focus more on that. But yeah, there's those multiple reasons, but I still feel like it holds out as my favorite. Again, even though Rogue has worked its way up there. Pretty close second for me.
Yeah, if you're going for a simple martial character, I do think barbarians are probably one of the easiest because it's a barbarian. They don't have a lot of crazy things. Even fighters have a little more nuance to them. The only thing you really have to figure out with barbarians is the rage mechanic. And I mean, that just allows you to take more hits and stuff and be in the fight a lot longer. While fighters, you do have to consider a little bit more because their hit dice is a little bit lower. They don't have as much, most likely, constitution and stuff like that. Their AC might be lower because barbarians, while they have unarmored defense, you don't have to be the stereotypical naked barbarian. And I think you like Rogue because Rogue, surprisingly, a lot of people don't really consider as rogues have a lot to offer. They, despite just being someone who you think just does sneak attack and can do these uncanny dodge and the cunning actions and stuff, but their expertise allows you to really hone in on some skills that you could build your character around.
So 100% that is exactly what caught me off guard, I think, with it. And I wish I didn't avoid Rogue for so long due to whatever limits I had on my views of it. But Yeah, it really does feel like a super flexible class. You even mentioned like the skill proficiencies and expertises and stuff. Just I really was surprised at how much creativity and flexibility you can have there with exactly what your rogue is doing. I mean, I've joked about this in previous sessions of our podcast, but we've been in a campaign for almost a year. I've been a rogue, and I don't think I've picked a lock once, which would probably be kind of like a stereotypical rogue thing.
But we have another rogue that does it for you.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
true.
And like even though you're a rogue bard, like rogue, weirdly enough, can be a face character because of the expertise. Even if you don't have proficiencies in charisma and stuff, you get expertise into persuasion and still get like a +4 into the skill as much as almost anyone that just has proficiency. So like you could be the one that's survival. You could be the one that does the animal handling or the strength checks, even weirdly enough, even though that's kind of their dump stat. It's crazy when you really break it down and how you could create the rogue, because expertise allows so much flexibility, getting a double proficiency, which just goes up with your level. Like you don't need to have points into it for it just to keep going up.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, those are some of our favorite classes. What have been some of your guys' least favorite classes?
I don't know, monk, I guess, maybe. Like that's just trying to pick one. Not that I don't like monks, but I feel like maybe they're the most not kind of fleshed out beyond their stereotypical. They're the key ones. They're very hard to hit and stuff, but I don't think they really emphasize more beyond the stereotypes of it. Like kind of go for it and have some of their features that are from the subclass and make it into their main class, perhaps. I think the biggest part actually is because monks don't have a lot to offer on their main class, and a lot of their power and creativity and fun is in their subclasses. In most classes, you really want a powerful class, and then allow the subclass to augment just what you want that class to be. But you don't kind of get that from a monk.
That makes sense. I would say for me, it was probably paladin, because while I really appreciate mechanically everything they can do, the way that the builds work, the sort of like innate rigidity involved in playing a paladin as a character choice isn't as fun for me. Like, I don't necessarily, not that you can't have a paladin that has doubts, or you can't have a paladin that has like, certain veers off like their path, but the sort of oath structure of the paladin build feels to me like personally just like a little bit restrictive as far as things like, your character choices and your alignments go. And so for me personally, like, because I am more invested in the RP side of things in general than I am in the combat and tactics sides of things, I feel like that sort of makes them just one of my like lesser preferred. But again, like you said, it's not like I don't like them. I think that as a build goes, like, they're pretty sick. They can do some really cool stuff, which is why I built one for like my first character. But even just in the couple weeks I was playing her, I was like, oh, this is kind of difficult, like from an RP standpoint, just for me personally.
It's interesting because that's actually the reason I liked playing Paladin was the limits on it, in a sense of what you could or felt like the character could do from like an RP perspective, or from some of their choices or motivations. I actually found it kind of interesting to try to fit within and stay very like rigidly to that oath when I had played mine. But no, it definitely makes sense what you said though. For me though, this one's actually a funny one, because I would say my least favorite class is Bard, which is probably a relatively popular one, and also one I've played like 3 times now. Most of which I think only once has been as the primary class, and then I think the other 2 times were just, it was like my kind of secondary class as a gestalt. But yeah, I don't know. I've tried it. I've really wanted to like it. And then I don't know. I think the first time was kind of due to lack of execution on my part. Choices I made that sort of messed it up. I don't know. There's something about like the style of it, the skills that are available for it. I just haven't found the right like combinations of it, I guess, yet that I enjoy, which again is tough because I've done it now so many times. But yeah, that one for some reason just hasn't stuck with me.
It's because you're not a creative person. It's okay. You can admit that.
Here we go.
Well, that's funny because I was going to actually ask as a follow-up, I was going to ask, do you think that now after this campaign, getting so much more into like the RP side of things kind of for the first time for you, do you think you would circle back to one of those bards and maybe they would be more interesting?
Nope.
I mean, I'll even have something
Okay,
to
then.
add on to that though, because bards as spells have a lot to offer outside of combat. And they do have stuff to offer inside of combat, of course. They're not in any way shy of combat. They're actually pretty powerful. Most of their spells aren't as obvious as like fireball. They do the thing. Lightning bolt. They zap the thing. These are ones that like, hey, I can make this guy think that everybody around him is an enemy and now he'll attack everybody. Or spells that like apply curses and stuff like that. So it's a lot more of a trying to figure out how to use the spell rather than just I do the thing and then it does the thing. And I think that is a almost hidden complexity with bards, particularly with their spells and even their bardic inspiration. Maybe not bardic inspiration, but like some of their spells and their features and stuff can have that hidden complexity to it. They also tend to be a jack of all trades, and us being gestalts, they're kind of a pretty easy add-on because they also have expertise, and then they literally have an ability called Jack of all trades. So, it just tricked for the trade. No matter what class, you could throw in a bard and probably be fine.
Well, and that's a funny thing too. I mean, I know I gave you a quick no, but more so because there's now like, again, after experiencing Rogue, which was so low on my list of things I wanted to try and enjoying it so much, now like all these other classes I haven't tried before, like Artificer, Ranger, Wizard, those are actually now kind of like ones I want to try next. So it's more just that because I've done Bard multiple times, I probably tried these other things. But no, I mean, Randy, you just mentioned the Bardic Inspiration. That was actually why I first did the Bard, was because I thought it was going to fit my sort of support-ish utility kind of style I like to play on characters. But then I think it was just choices I made that it didn't. However, still enjoyed it. Like, even though I'm saying it's my least favorite class, like I remember doing a ton of fun RP stuff with the Vicious Mockery, for example, or on the current character. It's funny. I think everyone always says I'm like the least bard in this current campaign, but I found a really good way to utilize some of the bard, the Whisper subclass of it, to really boost my rogue abilities. So
right,
yeah, still found uses for it. And yeah, I probably honestly would try it again at some point, but man, there's just so many other classes I want to try in between.
I actually think that earlier on, before you even delve into the bard stuff, you actually probably would have been more of a rogue fighter because of the way that she kind of Silka ended up being out to be. But nowadays, you're utilizing a little more of the nuances of a bard, that it feels like you're a little more of a bard. I think if you were hesitant on the bard, you probably would have went fighter with Silica.
I think bard or rogue fighter probably would have made her stronger as well, technically, like you're saying, because of how I ended up playing her.
Yeah, doing her exactly the way she was. Like, screw the spells. Yeah. I'm just going to be the one-hit wonder that I kind of am. With fighters, you're more of a three-hit wonder, so.
I was thinking about going back to favorite classes because I didn't bring this up because it's not like a main Player's Handbook class, but honorable mention to the Blood Hunter from Critical Role, because it's really fun. I really did super enjoy, because I said that Druid was the one that I really like wanted, but I haven't gotten to play one. So I would say of classes I've played, the Blood Hunter probably I think was like flavor wise and like mechanic wise, Order of the Mutant was like one of the coolest builds that I got to play that I really liked a lot.
Letting the Blood Hunter out was a lot of fun, just seeing the mutagens and stuff. I think it makes sense too why they are such a popular class, because one, Critical Role sort of created it and they're really good. It seems like on a lot of their aspects, like watching some of their NPCs they create and a lot of their magic items are always the most enticing because they have so much to offer. They're very strong, like Blood Hunters are very strong rather than being, I'd say they're on the top end of balance. I don't think they're overpowered, but I do think that they're like really high up there, that Blood Hunters as a base is already really strong. And then they kind of get augmented with their other stuff to be just, again, really strong competitive classes.
Yeah, the sort of pro and con, right, is that your Blood Hunter has to survive to at least like level 5 to gain that sort of like very balanced strength. Because at lower levels, they are extremely vulnerable to their own self-inflicted damage. And so it's very easy to accidentally unalive your Blood Hunter in a lower level campaign. But if you're starting at level 5 or like even higher, or if you're gonna ascend like pretty rapidly, then it's a really solid choice for like the mid to upper levels, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, I know you had it or played it the one time, and it's honestly probably one of the classes I just haven't really looked at. I guess I've always stuck with sort of those other main ones. But yeah, I actually don't know too much about Blood Hunter myself.
It's really fun. You could be, the subclasses are also very cool and give like very different types of styles, like different flavors. It's kind of, I feel like it's kind of a little bit like what you were saying about Rogue, where you didn't realize how much like you could zero in on specific things that would like inform the character in the different types of subclasses that were available. I feel like Blood Hunter is like that too.
I'll have to add it to my list.
Yeah.
We talked about our favorites and least favorites, but what do we think are some of the best beginner classes and why? Like someone brand new to D&D, varying levels of background and nerdom. What are some of the best beginner ones? What do we think?
Tricky, what do you think one of the best beginner ones is?
Oh man, if I'm going like a martial character, I would definitely say barbarian for obvious reasons. I think it could give a person, maybe if they're really new to this kind of stuff, you don't have a lot on your plate, but you can really take your time to like get into the campaign itself, get into the character building, get into all that stuff. And then combat wise, you can create a kind of kit. Again, it depends what subclass you go with and everything, but it feels like it just gives you a little bit of a safety net there. And then again, you can have freedom and flexibility to work on other things while you're learning D&D itself. But that would be for kind of like a melee martial, I suppose. But magic wise, I would actually say maybe warlock.
Why do you think warlock?
It feels like warlock, at least from when I played it, had several builds you could go with it that were very good, but also on the simple side, like almost focusing on that Eldritch Blast style, stereotypical warlock. It feels like you could get that like magic feel. You don't have a ton of spells slots to maintain or worry about. So I don't know. Yeah, it feels like it's not overly complicated, but could give you that sense of being a magic caster.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say for Warlock as well, is that if you wanted to do a caster class, I feel like that would be a good sort of gentle start on being a caster. I would recommend, for instance, my roommate has been listening to me talk about D&D ever since she moved in and wants to play, and we've been trying to get together as a campaign, but because of who we're playing with, it's going to be a Spelljammer campaign, which is the sort of ethereal plane setting, and so she's going to be like a hippo like a GIF sorcerer, which I think the sorcerer is a little bit similar to the warlock, but I told her, she was like, is there any class I shouldn't try first? And I basically said, just because also I know her, and she's going to be trying to learn the rules, to avoid prepared spellcasters, like people who can change their spells every single day, because it just gives you this gigantic list to constantly go pick from. And if you're in a session where the DM is like, okay, it's the next morning, what are you doing? And you haven't, it's only been 2 seconds in your real life since you had a whole different list of spells. It can be tricky to try to feel like you're scrambling to change everything. And, so she went sorcerer, but yeah, I think warlock for sure for if you want to do a caster class. And for martial, I think barbarian is a good choice, but also I think maybe monk would be good, because I feel like a lot of their more complex stuff doesn't come into play until higher levels as well.
Key can be a little complex, but I don't think it's that complex, because you could just flurry of blows every time and still be fine. I kind of feel the same way with the sorcerer, where metamagic seems complex, but then you could just use like quicken spell every time, and you just turn a spell into a bonus action, and then still use your cantrip every time. So like you can make a complex thing for those kind of classes much more simple for easy people. And I think if for me, if it weren't for meta magic, I'd say sorcerers were the go-to. I've mentioned before, their spell list is small but powerful. They don't have the ability to change them, which usually is a negative, but because their spells are already really powerful, you don't really feel that effect as much. I think druids are also surprisingly easy because they have a really good spell list as well. And while Wild Shape is a cool mechanic, you could kind of ignore it if you really wanted to. Not that many people should, because it's so fun to become like a little spider and, check out the like infiltrate and stuff like that, or just eavesdrop and stuff. But even if you did ignore it, they still have a good spell list and their subclasses are a lot of fun. I also agree, Barbarian for a martial character. Fighters are very simplistic too. Most of the martial characters, even Rogue is really easy to get into. So those don't have that much to them. The spells is I think what holds back casters as a whole from being just easy, because there's good spells and bad spells.
Good spells, bad spells, the rules, applying them, especially if you're brand new to D&D as well.
Yeah.
Can be a bit tricky instead of, just smacking something in the face, right? As a barbarian or a fighter or even a rogue.
Like, weirdly enough, Shape Water is one of the most powerful cantrips in D&D in terms of a utility spell, but it requires the creativity because there's so many things you can do with it because of how it functions. But you have to have that creative and figure out the nuances of it, that it takes the knowledge and time. And again, the creativity that a lot of people just unfortunately don't have.
Or like they would have, but they're split focus, like trying to learn the game. So like sometimes those things are just something that you can do later once you don't have to think about the rules so much. Even people that play at like a pro level or like, an actual play podcast or show level make mistakes all the time.
Oh,
so
100%.
It's nothing to be, if you can't track like, oh, that one was an action, not a bonus action, crap, or you forget about your oh, that has a verbal component, I can't cast that in the silence. Or I literally just listened to a season finale of like one of my favorite actual play podcasts, and I'm only laughing because I tried to pull this off and Randy caught it and was like, no, you can't. Or no, one of our other players caught it and was like, actually, you can't do that. And so I didn't get to do it, but they were in their finale and one of the characters was like, I cast Hallow as like an action. And I immediately started laughing because I was like, oh no, that takes 24 hours to cast.
Yeah.
But they didn't catch it in their game, and so he got to do it. I was like, dang. I wish I could. I guess I didn't get to get away with it, but he did. But yeah, it was just a mistake, as like, you didn't check the casting time one time. Like ultimately, it's all imaginary, and as long as nobody's like personally hurt at the end of the day, then it's okay to make, learning curve errors are totally normal, even when you've been playing for years. So
I try to like keep track of everyone's abilities and stuff like that. And of course, like you said, DMs can miss it and stuff too. And sometimes other players catch it, which is fantastic that everyone kind of keeps to the same page. And I'm completely okay with the fact that players don't always remember their things. And sometimes whenever they're casting a spell, I'll look it up real quick and make sure that everything's working as intended, of course, too. Like Hollow, for example, where I may not know what it is. So I'll look it up real quick and then find out, oh, hey, also the cast time 24 hours, by the way. Didn't really realize it. I was just seeing how the mechanic of it actually even works. So sorry. And then sometimes like the Rule of Cool tries to go into play, but like there are like Rule of Cool and there's, okay, this is completely like breaking the mechanics of it. So we might have to dial that back a little bit, but you could, I don't know, use Unholy Ground or something like that, or Consecration.
And that's honestly, even regardless, we're talking about potential best beginner classes, right? But even if you did pick one of those, ones we're mentioning, Barbarian, Warlock, Fighter, or something like that, if you picked one of those, or even if maybe you do go with something super complex, more complex on your first go, the biggest like recommendation would be to talk to your DM or even just talk to other people about what you're thinking, right? Just to make sure, again, even no matter how much D&D knowledge you have, maybe you have like an idea for something you want it to be, but maybe someone else was like, oh, hey, actually, just so you know, this doesn't work with that. Or, oh, maybe try this instead. Workshop it around a little bit and don't hesitate to do that, and definitely recommend doing that as well. Because yeah, I've had multiple times where, going back to Monk, I had this whole idea in my head of what it was going to be, and then just due to some oversights or some choices, I think I had like bad bonus action economy or something. it just didn't work out the way I exactly intended, and it's totally fine. Like it can happen, but if you just talk with people a little bit, get some other opinions early on, especially as like a first time campaign or something, that'd be great.
One of the biggest archetypes in video games that D&D doesn't do very well, especially at lower levels, is healing. While yes, healing is important and you could totally do it, but like being a 100% focused healer does not usually end up going well. There's almost always more damage being outputted than you can heal, and it's better to try to mitigate that damage entirely than trying to overheal it. And I think that's what you kind of ended up also falling into, is that you found out that healing wasn't quite as effective in the sort of character you're trying to go for.
Yeah, I wanted to still do both, like damage and healing, at least somewhat effectively, but then realized a little too far in that I gave up. Like I sacrificed too much damage to have more healing, but then can't do the healing when I'm doing the damage. It was a funny combination of action, bonus action, economy stuff, but yeah, definitely gonna have some weird interactions.
I luckily end up being a little bit of a, like I said before, a sort of knowledge soaker. So me as the DM, I try to help with that sort of aspects and stuff too. Not every DM can be perfect, and they all have their own ways of utilizing and trying to help out, or just letting people go with the flow. But I will try my best to help someone not ruin a character before they start to play it. I want to know what kind of archetype you want to be. I want to know the style you're trying to pick out of your character. But beyond that, then I'll make sure that it's to the best that it can be.
Definitely, even as like kind of an optimized gestalt, because for this campaign as a cleric, I've noticed that with the healing too, even though I have two, like my warlock class is celestial. So like I still have a lot of the cleric spells, even on my warlock side. It's still not enough to keep people like fully at a good level, especially at higher levels when we're taking so much damage per round. I ended up actually using my bonus action passive ability, where I just have a certain amount of dice I can heal people per day. I use that almost more than any healing spell. I think I've cast Cure Wounds once this entire campaign. I just use my intrinsic, like basically my version of Lay on Hands. I use more often than anything else.
Or your magical weapon.
Or I ended up getting, a legendary item that can do much larger heals for me. But until then, we were kind of out of luck for a little while.
Yeah, I feel like I never get any healing.
Oh my God.
I mean, speaking of like legendary items and like stuff like that, let's go make a legendary character next. Flash round time. This is where we take turns picking one aspect of a character that anyone can use. If you play one, let us know who or what they conquer. All right, you two, roll initiative.
I got a 13.
15 plus 1, 16.
Randy.
I gotta add my bonuses though.
You don't get bonuses for this.
I already had bonuses last time. I'm getting bonuses. Why did I put so many points into Dex then?
Wait, we can do that?
Yes, I said that last time.
All right. Randy, me, and then Ginger.
Okay.
Even without my bonuses, I got to be first. So this is great. So for the race, I guess we're going to go with a metallic Dragonborn because I want to see someone shiny just tearing out the battlefield.
Ooh, shiny.
Ooh, shiny.
All right. Well, then for class, this very shiny Dragonborn will be a sorcerer.
Well, I feel like it would be an easy out to pick Draconic Sorcerer. So I'm going to do something a little different. Randy, what color is the metallic dragon? Which
Oh, they're gonna be a bronze dragon for sure.
bronze dragon? Okay. Okay, bronze dragon. I'm gonna go Clockwork Soul.
Ooh.
Ooh. And I mean, for their appearance, as I said, they're gonna be a bronze dragon, so they'll have like some dark, almost entirely black eyes with a little bit of gold in their irises. They'll have their bronze scales. They'll have a little bit of that extra dark hue to them. And they'll have horns protruding out of their chin as well as their head. Maybe 4 horns out of their head.
Why did you pause so long for those horns? Where they were going to be?
Yeah, I was worried.
So they've got horns in other places too, but we don't have to talk about that.
Oh. Well, then,
That's what I was worried about.
for their background, because they obviously shine and stand out, but they don't like it. So their background's going to be a hermit. They just want to be alone.
Okay, that makes sense. So for their personality trait or quirk, if they're a hermit but as a clockwork soul, I'm going to actually go super literal and say that it's a clock maker that likes to just be left alone to fine tune their timepieces. And maybe they have sort of a sub-interest in chronomancy.
And for their ideals, since they're on that dragon born side of it, we're going to go a little bit on the maybe evil side and have a little bit of greed on their side. They actually hoard clockwork items and clocks and little clock devices and things like that.
Ooh, okay. So this is perfect then. So for bonds, because they got that little evil in them, they like to make these things, right? Their bonds are, my creations are my everything. They will protect them.
Okay, as a creative that never sells their artwork, I feel targeted now.
Good.
Perfect.
Okay, that's also kind of a flaw, but let's see if we're a little bit evil and we're a little bit greedy, a little bit guarding of our hoard, right? Which is also very draconic. I think that their flaw would be secretly they actually are lonely and they wish people would come and visit them.
Aw, but just not take their shit.
Because it's not very, it's not like a proper thing for a draconic, evilly aligned character to feel. Maybe they have like some Megamind vibes,
Yeah.
but secretly like on the inside.
Yeah, and for their trinket, they have like almost like a little like a sundial watch that they've always been wanting to give to that someone special, but they've never found that person.
Aww.
Aww.
Well, let's see. For their name then, I'm going to go with Krine. Krinre. Krine.
Very close to crime.
Very nice.
Is it?
But not quite secretly.
Yeah. Go commit your crying.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this session and want to hear more, you can find us on Twitter at DysfictionalPod for our latest updates and downloads.
Original music for this podcast is provided by Joshua Silver, the artist known as Dimonon on Spotify.
Dark elves are not always evil. I said it. Can I please go home now?